Okay, welcome back to our React JS tutorial series. Today I'm going to cover backend routing. So we're going to set up a backend server on our React project here. You notice that so far we've set up our front end to do everything on this. This is the client side front end on our local host that we've been hosting this whole website. So I'm going to show you how to set up a backend on this. Let's go down here. You'll remember that I did an npx create react-app. And we installed that into our root folder here. Well, I should have created a folder called frontend, like that. And the front end is also called the client. And I should have put all of these files into that front end client folder because it would have made it a lot more clean, because right now I'm going to create a backend. And the backend is also called a server. But I'm going to call it backend for now. So now down here in our terminal, I'm going to cd into the backend because we just created that folder. And then now we're going to do an npm init-y. You don't have to do -y if you don't want to, but I'm going to do a -y because it creates it automatically. I don't have to enter in all this description stuff. And we go into the backend folder now. You'll see this package.json. That's what it creates right here. And I'm gonna step through this really quick. Right here, it's when you do a -y, it automatically creates this index.js for your main. So we need to create that inside of our backend here. Let's create a file called index.js. If you don't want to call it that, just change this. Change it to server or something. But, index is fine. And then right here where it says test scripts, I'm going to change this. I'm going to say start to make it run just like the front end. And in here, I'm going to say node index. You can put index.js or you can just say index. So now if I do an npm down here, like npm start, we'll just run it. Just like our front end, we did an npm start. It just makes it easier to remember. So save that, close up the package, we're done. And now let's set up our back end server here. This is a node server that we're running. There's many servers out there that you can run with our React app here for a backend, but the Node one runs very well since everything we're programming in here is Node. Okay, so we're going to install these right here. npm install express. We need cores and we need body-parser. Make sure that you install all of these because it's very important. You might run into issues later on if you don't install all of these, and I'm going to set up all of these right now. And I'll show you right here the package.json. It installed our dependencies. Here's my versions. BodyParser, cores, express. Very important, install all of these. Now going back into our index.js here, I'm going to do a const express equals require express. Now let's put in the cores. Cores equals require cores. So we need this cores right here so that we can access our server from different domains. And you will run into issues if you don't install this. There's other ways around it, but this is the best way. So install cores here. We need BodyParser equals require body-parser right there. Now BodyParser, I think some people might say you don't need it. They might remove it later on, but for now, you do need BodyParser. I've been testing this out, and it's mainly used for our posts, for our form posts. Install this so that you don't have any issues later on. You need all three of these. So now we're going to set up the server here. Const app equals express. We're calling express here. We're using Node with express to run our server. Now let's do an app.use, and we're going to add in our bodyparser.json. Now we're doing this .json because we're reading everything. We're parsing our bodies for our forms when we're submitting forms and all that, and we are accepting it as JSON data so we can process it. Also need app.use, bodyparser.url encoded, and you can get all this code from anywhere if you look it up. It's just basic code here for the body parser. Extended is false. And I need one more right there. Close it up. Now we're going to add in cores. App.use cores. But we need some options in here. So I'm going to do a const cores options equals. And let's give our cores options. We need the origin. once again, this is basic. You can find it if you look up cores, what to add in for the option. Credentials is true, and option success status 200. So when it becomes success, it's going to return a 200 status for us. So these are the options we can add in here. Cores options. You can actually just put all this right here directly in here, but you know, this makes it clean. Now let's set up our port to run the server on. Const port equals 4000. And I'm gonna step through this right here. Let's set up the server. Const server equals app.listen. We need to listen on the port 4000, and then let's do an error function here, because when it runs, we're going to console log to let us know that the server is running. Server is running on port, and the port is port. So that will display in our terminal here when the console is running, the server. And so we're running this on port 4000. What do you remember about our front end here? Our front end is running on server 3000. I can set this port to anything I want. I can put 3001 if I want. I can put 5000. You might see some developers do 8080. Just set it to whatever you want. I'm putting 4000. And so that's how it works. The backend is going to run on this port 4000. So when I'm calling localhost 4000, that's our server. And then here I can direct it to any API that I want. I can call our .get, .post, all of that in our backend. And then for the front end, it's running this. And that's how this thing is running when we're clicking on all the links to the separate pages, right? That is how the backend and front end is running. And you need to run these servers simultaneously. So I'll show you that in a minute when we activate the front end and then we activate the backend, and they both have to be running for our homepage to work. Now, this is very important. I want you to go to our front end here. Go to the front end package.json file right here. And right under our scripts here, you can actually put it anywhere, but right under our scripts, I want you to put in a proxy. And we're going to call this http://localhost 4000. This is our new proxy for the backend server, comma there. And this is for the front end package, right? So it's very important to add this in. If you have all this set up, you shouldn't have any issues with the backend server. Now, everything is good on this backend server. I'm going to show you how to do our API here, how to call the backend server, how to do routing on it. So let's set that up right now. And I'm going to set this up after our app.use here, after our cores option here. And you might see this in a lot of other tutorials. They might do an app.get, right? They do an app.get inside here, and then, you know, if you call the users in here, and has a request response. So you might see this, other developers doing this in their tutorials, and they're adding, you know, even the post in here too, like this. So you might see this, and if you think about it, look at this. If you're adding like 20 of these get and post, this page is going to get really long. And I don't like that they're showing how to do that. What I want you to do now is we're going to add a router in here and make things very clean. So let's go into our backend folder here, and we're going to create a folder called routes. Now create a file in here called router.js inside of our routes folder. And this is where we're going to set up our routes so that you don't forget. Let's go back into the index.js here, and let's include this routes. So say const router equals require. Inside the same folder, there is a routes right here and the router. So now that we required the router, let's use it. So go down here after the cores option. We're going to say app.use, and we're going to use it inside of the main index file here, router. So now we have our router set up. We never need to touch this index file again. Oh, and I also want to mention this, like, make sure you add this in like how I added. Do the BodyParser, do the cores, and then you need to have this router at the very end. If you put this router at the top here, after the app or anywhere else, it might break. You need to include this router after everything, after all of these options in BodyParser. So have the router at the very end. So now we can just close up the index and do a router in here. So up here, let's do a const. We need to put in express equals require express, and we need the router. Const router equals express dot uppercase router. So now that we have the router here, we can just say router dot get, And I'm going to do this right here. I'm going to pull in our users. I'm going to set this user thing to show you an example of what we're going to do here. Last thing, we need to export this module.exports equals router. We're exporting the router here. So you see how we set up this router. Everything here gets exported into our index, and we can just call different routes on this. Okay, so now I want to show you this right here. If you remember our front end, if I go to the contact page here, you remember that we're pulling all of this drop down data from a backend on another website. And we were using this right here, the JSON placeholder website right here. This is a API that they created on this site, right? They created this API here, users using their backend, and their backend is returning this JSON code. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to copy all of this, copy it. And I want to replicate this on our own server so that we're not calling this site right here. I'm going to have all of our data in this dropdown using our own server. And normally, you know, I would be pulling this from a database. We'll go into database in the next tutorial, but this one I just want to show you. We're doing right here, const user data equals, I'm just going to paste in all this code here, right? Just to make it simple. And you know what? I'm going to cut this down a little bit so that you can just see that we are pulling this from our server. I'll just have 1, 2, and 3 right here, right? Make it easy. So this is just JSON data. Imagine that we're connecting to our database and we pull all this and we're returning that same object for us to use. And then down here, I just do a response.send and user data. And now if I run this on port 4000, it will show down here. I'm going to show you. I'm running this front end server down here in another terminal. I'm going to switch back to my backend here. I have nothing run on the backend. See, I have 2 terminals running, these 2. And so the front end, I did an npm start, and the front end is running right here. This is the front end. So now I'm going to run the backend here. So I'll do an npm start. And see, it's saying server is running on port 4000. Let's switch to our backend here. So if I put in localhost 4000, I have nothing to get initially, but if I put in users, look at that, it's returning that JSON data, just like the previous code from that other website. It's returning the same data. So now I'm going to use this for our front end to pull in here. So let's go back to our front end. So close up this back end here, go down here to our source for the front end. And this is why I suggest creating a front end folder so that you can just read it a little bit better. But inside our source here, let's go to the contact page here, right? And the contact page here, this is where we're doing the fetch data. You see this Axios fetch, and this is where we're pulling it, right? Well, let's switch it to our localhost now. This will now pull in /localhost 4000. It's going to pull in that users, and it should be the same data. So let's save this, and that should have refreshed our front end when we save it. Let's go back here, and now this drop down should only have a few items. See that? Look at that. It's pulling in our 3 items that we put in right here. So that's how the front end and back end works together. Now I'm going to show you this. Since the front end, it does anytime you make changes to it, for our front end here, it saves it. Just remember for the back end, anytime you make a back end change, you have to restart the server. So I have to like cancel out the server, then npm start it again. But there's other little packages that you can install that can run it and save the change and refresh for you. But I'm just showing you a quick example. Look, I stopped the server, right? So if I refresh this, it's not going to pull anything because look, the backend is not running. There's no backend now because I stopped the server. So you see how both of them has to run at the same time. The front end has to run, and then our backend server has to run to give us our data. So if I start this back up, now it's running on port 4000. See here, it's running again. So if I refresh this, it pulls the data. So that's how front end and back end works. And I'm going to get deeper into this because, like I said, this is just a quick example of the get. Let's do a post because we're going to work with our contact page here to do post. Let's go back to our front end here. I'm going to close up the back end here. Let's go to our source, go to pages, and the contact us page right here in our front end. And if you remember in our front end with the contact page here. Let me show you. This is what we currently have. We have our contact page, and we're currently only doing a get. We're doing a get to get this drop down data, but now I want to post this data. I want to fill out this form and post it to our own server. And if we scroll down here, here's our form. This is what we have right now. We have the email, we have the drop down select values, and then we have a message. So those are the three things that we have. And all the way up here, we are capturing those in variables called email. We have the message, and then this is our drop down select data. So that's what we're capturing to use throughout our whole our application here. And then here's the fetch for the drop down, but we need a post. And if you see down here in the button, is doing on click handle submit so that we can handle this form submit. And here's the handle submit. It's preventing it from submitting. We do our error checking, and then now we want to post that data. I'm going to create a function called post data. And so let's create this post data function up here, and we'll create it right after our Axios fetch, because I'm going to do a const Axios post data equals async arrow function. And if you remember from our previous tutorial, I went over the React fetch data compared to Axios fetch and post, and Axios is just better, so that's why I'm using this one. But if you want to see how to do the fetch post, you can watch the previous video. Let's set up our data. Let's do a const post data equals, and let's put in our values that we want to post: the email, the website select, right here select value. That's what I'm calling it. We're gonna get that select value for the drop down. Let's put it right here, and then we have the message, right? And we're just calling that message. So that's our post data. And let's do an await on this, axios.post, and we're gonna post this to our http://localhost now 4000, and we'll post it to a an endpoint called contact, and then we're gonna use that post data that we just created up here, post data. Here you go, so you can see it better. And then after it posts, I'm gonna do a then on this. We're going to take the response. We're gonna set our errors. I created a variable down here called set errors. You can call it whatever you want, but after we post it, I want to put in a message that it was posted. And so I shouldn't call this errors. I should call it something else, like form message or something like that, so that we're more clear. But I just have set data for now, and I'm gonna set the data to, let me see here, class name equals success. I have a class called success that makes this green so that I can show on the page, and we're going to post this response.data, because through this response.data, after we post it, I'm going to return a message that says it's been successfully submitted. Okay, I call this set error, so this is, there we go, set error. Okay, so we got our post data all correct here for our form. After it submits, we're posting it to our server. See, post data. I want to clear this data actually. Let's do a set error to nothing for now. I'm going to clear it. I'm going to post the data, and then it should put in a new error message or a success message after it posts. We're handling this submit. We're posting it to our server. So now let's go to our server and set up this this post. Let's go back to the router. And in here, we need the router.post. And you can put it anywhere, but I'm just going to put it right here, router.post. We call it contact, and it's taking in a request response. It always takes that in. And right now, I just want to show you that it's posting. So let's do a const, and I'm going to destructure this email. We'll just call it website and message equals request.body. So we're taking in this request, this post request right here from our contact that we're posting, and we're taking the body of it. It's giving us the whole JSON data. And I'm just going to do a console log to show that it's displaying this. So email, website, message. And then right here, I'm going to say response.send, and I'll say message sent. Thank you. Because I'm going to send back that response right here. I'm going to send that back so that we can display that it was successful. and this response.data is what's returning right here, this data. So yeah, for now I just want to show that it's sending. So let's go back here. Let's start up our server in the backend. npm start. Let's go over here. Post data not defined. Okay, I'm calling this Axios post data. Let's go back down here and change it. Axios post data. It's not called post data. Save that. Here we go. Put in my email right here, and I'll submit this Ramiro one down there. This is a test message, and let's submit this. And there you go. Message sent. Thank you. To make this green, let's go to my app.css here. Let's put in a success. Color green. See how simple that is? Created our CSS here for contact us page. This is where it's doing the CSS right here for success. And you see how it updated it here? It made it green. You see how that posted the data? We accepted the data from our contact us page because we're using useState to get all the values. Then we're taking that value and putting it into our post right here to set up the message format. Because when we're doing a post, it takes in data right here in the options. We're posting it to this 4000 port here to our contact, and that's coming from our backend router right here. Contact right there, port 4000/contact. It takes in this whole thing. This destructuring is really the same thing as saying const email equals request.body.email. It's the same thing like that, you know, if you want to break it up. Website equals request.body.website. So it's just faster coding. Comment that out. And yeah, it just makes it a little bit faster and easier, cleaner to read, because we know that the body only has these three right here, and we're taking it all in. And then I'm just console logging it. So yeah, that's how we set up our backend post here. And you see that everything is running great now. We have our backend 4000 that we can just create any API endpoint that we want. I can call this anything I want. We can, usually you'll see developers put this into an API so that they can read it better. I'm just calling it users for now. We created a users and a contact. You go to straight to contact here. It's not gonna pull anything, right? Because it's doing a post on it. And this is doing a get to just display this data. And yeah, this is our front end using port 3000. So that's how everything ties in together with front end and back end. I hope that clears things up. When I first worked with React, I had a difficulty understanding front end and back end. And so now you know how the back end router ties together, how to set it up. And like I said, very important to follow my my setup here through the index to require all these. And you know, it might change later on. Node sometimes changes some of these. They might make this default and you don't need to include the body parser anymore. But this is how I got everything to run perfectly without any issues. So just set it up this way. And at the end of my tutorials, I will have this full code on my GitHub. You want to view it in my repository, but for now, just view it on this to help you learn. It really helps to learn to type all this out. Don't copy and paste. Just type all this out because your brain will just absorb all this and memorize it, and then it'll be a lot easier. So yeah, that's how you set up the backend router. The next one, I will step into databases because I don't want to cover database in this. It can be quite long, but really I'm going to take all this data and I'll put it into the database, and I'm going to pull this from the database to show you that we can do the same thing without, you know, hard coding it like this. This is how a regular development will work. You pull all this from a database, it'll give you this JSON object, and then we just display it on the page. And then also when we save the form here, we submit it. I'm going to save this to a database, and then we're going to send it off. And you can use an email server like SendGrid or something like that. And so this is just to show you how to set up the back end and front end. Hope this helps you out. Stay tuned for the next tutorial. Kodakai out.